And hey, today, what do you get when you get a bunch of guys grouped together and with a common theme of hunting? Well, we have a group of guys here. We're going to talk with them today. My name is Roy Canterbury. I'm your host today on Archery Talk 101. And we have a group of guys here that have a passion of hunting and doing it together. So I'll let you guys introduce yourself. Start on whoever is on the right. Let's go ahead and introduce your name and tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, I'm Ken Norman, and I started this insanity back in 2011. I was born in North Carolina, western part of North Carolina, and got my first bow when I was like 9 years old, and upgraded in like 1980. A Christmas present was a Polar LTD, and that kind of planted the seed. I never killed a deer with it. I still had it. That's a to-do list item. And it was probably 2011. I got back into archery and killed my first deer, and it was like a drug. I was addicted, and I came to work, told these guys about it, and hounded them for about a year, and we got them bows and we got started. And you guys can introduce yourself.
And so my name is Brad Goodman. We actually all work together at a local hospital. And so this guy kept yapping about hunting and hunting and hunting. And I grew up on a farm, but the city annexed it into the city limits there. And so we never really got to do a lot of hunting when I was growing up. And so he just kept yapping. He's like, I got to warn you, it's going to be addictive. And I was like, whatever. And here it is, 10 years later, thousands of dollars, countless hours. And he was exactly right. But the thing about hunting for me is the stories. Actually sitting around like this and the banter of the deer camp talk. And that's I think that's my big appeal to all of this. So
my name is Travis Applegate. Again, as Ken deduced to that, yes, he started this whole long journey that we've all been on. I hunted when I was a kid, and it was always rifle hunting. And again, he just kept kind of hinting and dropping, hey, you guys need to get into bow hunting, and it's more of a challenge. So I came into this like zero knowledge, period. And once he talked me into it, I got a bow, and I just shot it constantly, all the time. Lucky enough, I had enough of a yard that I was able to shoot it in, and got consistent with it. And there was a 5-year journey of going into the woods and never shooting anything. But again, as Brad alluded to, just earlier, the stories that we have during that time, it's been a tremendous journey. And we just celebrated this past fall 10 years of us hunting together. And it's been we've basically formed a brotherhood. We consider each other brothers. My kids call him Uncle, even though we're not blood related. They're still Uncle Pete and Uncle Brad. But yeah, it's been fun.
It's come full circle. These guys have come a long way. I'm gonna tell some stories on them now, but that's all right. When we went out on our first hunt with me and Brad, I took him in. I set him up a set of climbing sticks. I set up a hang-on stand for him. And I said, okay, go up there, be careful. Here's a harness, make sure you're hooked in, blah, 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 blah. And I set him at the top of a ravine where, there was a split coming down. Well, I come down to get him after about 3 or 4 hours. He's talking about how uncomfortable the seat was. He was sitting on the platform and using the seat as a headrest.
now, I didn't know. And it made sense because the tree strap was nice and tight. I couldn't fall. He talked about practicing standing up very slowly. And from the platform, I got to tell you, that's a challenge.
And so he went from that to this year going to Missouri solo and killing himself a nice buck and coming back by himself. Travis shows up on the first trip. He's got a pack. He's probably got close to 100 pounds. There's firewood. There's a rope of like 50 feet of rope and all this other stuff. And we're like, you don't need that. You don't need that. You don't need that. And he's graduated from that to this year on one hunt. He killed him a buck in the doe with one sit. So they've come a long, long way from there to here. They're doing great.
Yeah, it's been a journey. Been a lot of fun. We definitely have a lot of stories that we can tell. And we're not sure if we have enough time.
So ask us some questions and you know.
Well, you kind of started out, you know, how you got started, and what has been the probably the most rewarding part of starting your archery?
Well, I think the whole process in itself is rewarding, because when I started, I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anybody to teach me. And it was trial and error, and it was very frustrating. And it took me probably, I don't know, a year and a half to get to the point where I could hit something past 20 yards. And, you know, started doing a lot of research on the internet, and then, you know, bumping into people like yourself that was willing to help me out and tune the bow and get it all figured out. And then actually harvesting my first deer, killing my first deer. And it was just like, you know, this is great. I've killed deer before with a rifle, but it was just like, you know, you can actually do this. And I find myself on this journey of making it more and more challenging by handicapping myself. Going from, you know, compound to recurve, longbow. And then, you know, there's this thing out called where you Frankenbow. I bought and this is probably my most rewarding thing I've ever done. I bought an old recurve bear youth bow from a lady in Florida off of eBay. I dremeled out the limb pockets, ordered me some recurve limbs, and put in some inner tube rubber to line the limb pockets. Sanded down the recurve limbs to get them to fit. Made a recurve bow out of this thing. Got some cheap Walmart Wolverine arrows, ordered some brass inserts, fletched them myself with feathers, and practiced all summer with this bow. And then in the fall, I went into the woods and I killed a nice little 6-pointer with it. And I carry around a piece of that 6-pointer's time on my keychain, because that was the biggest accomplishment, because I did it all from scratch and did it myself. And I've listened to you. I know you've shot recurve, a traditional, before, and trying to deer hunt with a recurve bow is a feat in itself. But for me to go and build all that and put it all together myself, and then actually go out, execute, and kill a deer with it, I was like, this is awesome. You know, I've accomplished something.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, is archery is that never ending. You keep learning, and you see the tactics, you watch the YouTube videos, and you try to put that into place. And each time I realize how little I knew, or how terrible I was, and how did I ever kill my first deer, knowing all that stuff now. So being able, just that journey through learning and experiences, and still having to keep
Tweaking it.
Yeah,
And
it's
the
never
failures end up being some of your greatest successes, because you learn from.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Right.
You go back to the woods and you go to sit up and you go, okay, this didn't work. This happened last time. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go here. And your failures end up being what builds you to your success.
Yeah, I would say just like you said, just trying different techniques. You know, watching some of the other guys on YouTube, and like ground hunting now is kind of something that's piqued my interest. Doing the stalking. The first year we went to Missouri, I wore a ghillie suit and ground hunted, and I saw plenty of deer. Not any of them that I took, but they were still within close enough distance that, you know, if they were of right size, number of points and all that. But just that challenge itself right there was something that I found very interesting. I want to keep on, you know, trying to do that. I guess just break away from the norm, you know, because a lot of people, I guess that's what kind of got us started on a Facebook page, because people that we worked with, you know, they just thought, well, you guys just walk out in the woods, sit in a tree and shoot something. Well, no, it's not. It's not like that at all, believe me. And especially I found it just going and hunting public land was something totally different. Because I grew up hunting on private land. I was fortunate enough, I had family, they had land and stuff, and I was able to go and hunt. So it was kind of that, yeah, just walk out from the back of the barn, go maybe 100 yards, climb up the tree. You know, they had a box barn, sit up in the box barn, wait for the deer to come out. Because it's like clockwork with them sometimes, and boom, shot them. Okay, climb back down and go get it. And the first year that I hunted with these guys, and you know, as Ken alluded to earlier about my 100 pounds of gear that I took, not to mention that 20 of the pounds was just my stand, because they called it my condo stand. I mean, this stand was huge.
This table.
And,
Giant platform stand. I mean, it was a huge platform stand.
So-
and we're hiking back into public land mountains.
Oh yeah, this was a good mile and a half back, and 900 to 1,000 foot
Yeah.
elevation gain. Yeah, that was a very big learning experience for me. You go as light as you can. But getting back to why we started our Facebook page was so that, and it started out small. I mean, we only had maybe 100 people
Yeah.
following us,
Yeah.
and most of that was family,
Coworkers.
friends, you know, people we worked with. And it was just to kind of give them a little bit of an insight of what we do. And now I think I checked this morning and we're up to like 4,400, over 4,000 people that follow us now. And a lot of those are throughout the entire country and world. There's that one guy, Gavin, is it, from Australia?
Yeah.
There's a guy from South Africa, I believe. And we didn't think it would go like that. We just figured, oh, we're just showing our friends what we do. And we do show, you know, not only just the hunting aspect, but even the off-season stuff. You know, I have bought some land a few years ago. I'm trying to get it set up. It's coming along pretty good. And so not only is it the hunting and the archery part of it, it's all the prep work too, the scouting that we do.
Yeah,
Especially when Ken and I, we went out to Missouri one spring. I think you two guys went out one spring just to go scout and find new areas. And I think that's why we enjoy it so much. It's never ending. It's always something new process.
Where we live is pretty diverse. Out here where Travis lives and Brad lives, it's pretty flat. There's a lot of agriculture. And it's easier to hunt. Over where I'm at the base of the Blue Ridge Mountains, steep terrain, not much agriculture. So we get to practice different techniques of how we hunt deer, because the way I'm going to go hunt a deer off the edge of a soybean field or a cornfield is not the way I'm going to hunt a deer back in the mountains on, you know, backside of a saddle, you know, working
No.
in a tunnel or a thermal. So what I learned from up there and what they learn from here, we share with each other. We both hunt in the same places, and it expands, you know, what we can do. We learn a lot from that. So, and then we take our road trips, go to Missouri. There's one year we did 5 states. He did Pennsylvania and New York. We did South Carolina, North Carolina, and Missouri. And with all the different habitat, and I know this is going to be kicking a hornet's nest. Deer are not the same. You know, you go to the Midwest, hunting deer in the Midwest that aren't as pressured as they are in the Southeast, where there's more hunters in the public land woods than there are deer. And I know that's kicking a hornet's nest. It's harder than it is to go out there and do that in the Midwest.
The thing that surprised me the most when we went to Missouri the first year to hunt, I have seen more deer in that first week in Missouri that we hunted than usually. A lot of times there's 2 or 3 years combined that I see here in North or in South Carolina, just because they're easily spooked.
A lot more pressure.
Yeah, there's a lot more pressure here, and there's a big difference between public and private.
I think partly in some places like in Missouri where you have the antler restrictions, some deer have been exposed to hunters and they haven't had a true, you know, a very negative response. And so while it's not a great thing, I think maybe in the Southeast that you know, it brown us down. Sometimes that mentality comes through. And so part of that, I think, is education. The antler restrictions is a great plus.
I smelled this guy, I saw that guy in the tree and I walked by and he didn't shoot at me.
Right.
So, you know, that antler restriction gives him 2 years to do that and not get killed. Where you're here in the southeast where you don't have that.
You're lucky you gotta lose your spots.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just the way it is. And here's an example of what I'm talking about. Year before last in the state, they killed 175,000 deer in South Carolina, right? Of that 175,000 deer, only 6,500 of them were killed on public land. So the pressure is real. So I love to hunt public land. If I can go out there, I'm not only competing with the deer, I'm competing with everybody else that wants to go there and try to kill a deer. And if I can go in there and be successful, then not only have I beat the deer, I beat everybody else that's trying to beat me to get to the deer. So I enjoy that aspect. Like I said, you're always trying to increase the challenge and make it a little harder.
Definitely. I agree with that. It's definitely a bigger challenge, I feel, hunting public land. As Ken said, you're not, just out there, trying to get the deer, but just finding these hidey hole pockets that nobody else has possibly, discovered yet or been to. Or I think you found a couple places this year where you're like, it looks like nobody's ever stepped foot here.
Yeah.
Um,
It's about the effort.
and that's what I think we really enjoy. The scouting part of it is just going and seeing places and thinking, all right, well, because you're going in there cold, you have no idea. I mean, there might not be a deer within 10 miles, but until you get boots on the ground, and I can tell you that Ken, he works night shift, I work night shift. And sometimes it's 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I get a text message and it's an aerial view of this. He's like, "What do you think about this area?" And I'm like, "Well, first off, where's it at?" So that's another aspect that a lot of people don't know is how much time we just sit in front of a computer, just trying to find new places to go and thinking, all right, well, you got this side, southeastern ridge here. That's possibly where some deer might bed down during the day when it's cold. And that was a lot of stuff that I've learned from Ken, because again, I grew up just hunting private land and go sit out there, wait for them to walk out and shoot them. Well, hunting the public land is definitely a lot different. And Ken has really educated me and Brad and again, other people, talking with people like you and just people that we've met in Missouri, the boys from Minnesota, and talking with them, we've met a lot of great people along the way, and we enjoy this journey.
And they help us out. I mean, it's just, my wife calls it a cult. Bow hunting is a cult. It's like you can walk up to a complete stranger in the mall and sit there and have a 2-hour conversation with them talking about hunting and bows and archery in general. And it is true. And I'll say 99.9% of the time, it is a community where people are really friendly and willing to help you out and share information. And the guys he was talking about in Minnesota, Dustin, they didn't get to go to Missouri this year, but they were drawn and got to hunt Iowa. So these guys that we've interacted with probably now for 6 years sends us maps and says, "Hey, here's where I've killed deer out of this tree right here for the last 40 years. If you guys are coming out, that's a good place to set up." And sends us all this information just to help us out, because they know we're coming from out of state to Missouri, and they're coming from out of state to Missouri, but they're not going to be there this year. And it's just amazing how much people are willing to help each other. And it doesn't seem like you find that in the rifle hunting community as much. The bow hunting community seems a little tighter group of people. It seems.
Well, like Donovan.
Yeah, Donovan.
Yeah, helped you out.
Yeah, I mean, for us on the East Coast, we got people that are halfway across the country that make connections for us. So when we show up, they take us out and put us on places to hunt. Chris
came out and helped us drag one time in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Chris, another friend of ours out there in Missouri, puts us on some private land from time to time. And like Brad was saying, Brad shot a deer one year, and he hops in his car, drives 40 minutes up to us, and helps us drag a deer out. So
one of my deer
Yeah.
Same place. Actually, that was a place that I shot a doe. And of course, I'm like all excited. I'm texting these two guys, and it hadn't gotten dark yet. And I text my wife, and my wife's like, "Well, why don't you just put another arrow in? Maybe another deer will come by." I'm like, "Yeah, what's the chance of that going to happen?" Well, 20 minutes later, here comes a nice 8-pointer, and shoot him too. So it was, those times that everybody just kind of helps out too, because the doe we were able to find, but the buck, he took off somewhere, and I thought I got him good, had good blood on the arrow and everything.
We
never
trailed
found
him.
it.
We trailed him that night, and then we went back the next day and trailed him probably for 4 hours. He went in one direction, I went the other direction, and we never could recover him. I think it was a one lung shot, and there's a chance he may have recovered from it, but we weren't able to recover him.
There's a story before that though too.
We got lots of stories. We got lots of stories. Like
We all have stories like that.
Yeah, guys coming from the southeast that's used to warm weather. If it gets down in the low 30s, we think it's cold. We get out there and we end up on a day where with the wind chill it's -5, and somebody decides he's still going to go. So we take him.
I had hand warmers, feet warmers, electric, whatever. It was game time.
It's a blizzard. The only people on the interstate on the way there were tractors and trailers, and we're questioning our sanity. And we go drop them off, and me and Travis go back and sit at the gas station and drink hot chocolate and stay warm and keep waiting for the phone to go off. Come get me, come get me.
Yeah, because Ken and I were taking bets on how long he's going to last out there. When we pulled up in the headlights, you could see the snow blowing sideways.
It was a blizzard, yeah.
And it was just like,
and I never blood trailed a deer in the snow. And so it was that easy.
they weren't going to be moving.
But it was going to stop. And as soon as it did, they started moving. And I ended up.
It was that evening.
That evening, right?
You guys,
And still, it was below zero. Go and get the me and him recover the doe. But now we got to gut the doe in the temperature plus wind. So Ken stepped up to the plate, and I appreciate it. He's like, "Listen, I can do this faster than you. I want you to get ready. I'm going to go gut it real quick. And then as soon as I'm done, I'm jumping back in the truck, warming up my hands because they're going to be freezing." And so appreciate that. And are we stopping at that, or are we proceeding?
We'll proceed.
All right. There's another layer.
Story after story after story. It's with -5 degrees and a blizzard going on outside. We're not going to process this deer outside in that weather.
And we were coming back. We really didn't want to wait for a low quality, quick process job, which we had run into previous.
It ended up being put in a cooler, carried into the hotel room, and processed in the bathtub.
So hopefully nobody ever gets in there and moving off.
We sanitized everything,
We did.
Clorox, rubbed everything down, but it's what we had to do. I mean, I didn't want to get frostbite and lose a finger trying to process the deer out in -5 degree weather with the wind blowing too. So
Driving back the day or the day after, I forget which one.
Well, I actually do. Once we got the deer processed, we actually packaged it up and everything. Then we put it on the top of the SUV. So it'd be outside overnight, so the meat would freeze, because that's how cold it was. It's like, how are we gonna keep this meat cold? And we're like, we'll just throw it on top of the SUV. Nobody can get to it. And
put it in the cargo rack, and it was frozen solid the next morning. Then we just put it in the cooler.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we have tons of stories like that. So if you want to talk about archery, ask us some questions to talk about archery.
Situation last year, and these hunters were coming out of the woods. We were all talking. Actually, you guys were talking to them about the deer sneezing.
Yeah,
I heard a deer sneezing, and so I went in the next morning, and I hear a sneeze, and I look around expecting to see a headlamp. There's nothing around. I said, I wonder if that's the same one. So here it comes. It starts to get first light. Here he comes. Boom, boom, boom. Pop him. And he went probably 30 yards. This was, first light. And we didn't have any radios with us. We didn't have cell phones out there. No communications. And so ended up bringing him back to the truck. And I was like, all right, what do I do now?
So I'm sitting in my tree stand on the corner of this cornfield. And I see this person walking around in the cornfield with an orange hat on. Just wandering around. And I'm like,
About where you
it's
were.
like, this is like prime time. This is like right after the sun, sun's come up and sun's been up for maybe an hour. And he's walking. I'm like, what is this guy doing? And then he walks in and I realize it's him. He's coming to get me. And I'm thinking I'm going to go help him get a deer or something. What it is, he's got the deer already in the bed of the truck. But it's just,
Retrospectively, I would wait. If I did that, I was excited and I wanted to share and yeah, my bad about that. That's actually that deer. I don't know if it's on camera or not, but
Yeah, it's on there.
So after I did a European on him and actually found out there was what kind of fly was
some
that?
kind of larva.
Some sort of, yeah. And ended up having like maggots in his nose. So that's what was causing the deer to sneeze, was the fly got in there, laid eggs, and was agitating the nose. And that's actually why the deer ended up dying. So that was
The sneeze got him.
yeah. Yeah, that was a fun little story. So,
We all have kind of some stories like that. I know one time I was out and a friend of mine, he shot the deer, was on public property, and it come running out and it died about 5 feet off of the road. You could just drive right up to it. Yeah, it was like 5 feet away from where he'd pull right up on the road, is right by a dump station at the campground, and it just throw it right in the truck.
That's awesome.
It's the best way. I mean,
Yeah.
compared to when we hunt up at Landrum.
no.
I don't know what it is about the deer here, but they always seem to run downhill on the opposite side of the mountain from where you park.
Oh, yeah.
They don't run to the truck here very often. They run the opposite way.
I did have a good one that time with you guys. We were in South Carolina on public and was setting up on a spot. It was kind of a bedding area. The wind was perfect. There was a ravine on one side, so they could only either come out my way or the back way. And ended up shooting the deer, spined it, unfortunately. And prior to this, it was either the day before, you had told me a story about some guy that had shot a deer 6 times or something like that.
Oh, yeah. It was on Archery Talk. But some guy had shot this poor deer, looked like a porcupine, had so many hairs sticking out of it. But I told him this story, and he's like, wow, that's terrible. I have to do that. And the very next day,
Spined the deer. And so the deer, unfortunately, was crawling back to the bedding area, which was behind me. And so she had come out, got shot, and she was crawling back in. And so she ends up at the base of my tree, and I shoot her again. And that was a fatal shot. And so at least as ethical as you could, fix that situation. And so I texted Ken, and he said, well, I said, I shot a doe. He said, well, good. Did you see where she ran? I said, yeah. He texted, well, did you find her yet? I said, yeah. And he's like,
I walked to his tree to go get him, and the deer is right at the base of his tree. I mean, I filmed him. He's climbing that out of the tree, and the deer is right at the base of his tree.
so the same way you're thinking about the deer always runs away. There is one time that the deer didn't.
Yeah, there wasn't much tracking involved there.
And that was the first time we ever packed a deer out.
Yeah.
And that was another learning experience. And with the temperatures, temperatures and everything, trying to get her out quick and in the summertime heat. So, but good time.
Yeah.
So what's it like?
We can talk about hunt stories all day long, and I know you want to. I know you want to talk about some archery stuff. So we can talk about those we shoot or whatever you want.
Yeah, we can, subjects are just kind of open, whatever we do. Each one is, as you listen to some of them or watch some of them, they're all different because, we're different people. And, I get that same thing you're saying it, if you're an archer, you're automatic friend. And, I've talked to people in other countries and it's the same feeling over there. Like when I was talking to the guy in Serbia, if you listen to that one, they help each other out. That's like you said, archers, we're helping each other out no matter what it is. We see a problem, he can help you out. And, that's why I wear my instructor's patch on my 3D rig, because if you're having a problem, you see the instructor patch, hey, ask me. Yeah, I'll help. And I won't go up and say, hey, you're doing this wrong, because there might be a reason why you're doing it. even though you might be.
Just stand back and
But-
shake your head, right? They'll
but-
figure it out.
You know, if they're struggling, then you can help them out. But you know, and I've talked to several people who go to, you know, some of these archery events, and you know that they'll finally talk to somebody that's really outstanding shooter, and is like, why didn't you talk to me earlier? Well, you were busy. It's like, hey, if I'm competing, yeah, don't talk to me. But you know, once I'm done, hey, talk all you want. So,
Kids, I love to get kids started in archery. I love
oh,
that.
oh yeah, that's, you know, and that's what, you know, the Arch Talk 101 podcast, you know, 101, it's beginners. The Facebook group, Arch Talk 101, Facebook group, as well as I own archtalk101.com. So, you know, it's all about helping beginners. You know, that's what I want to do, is help the new archer get started, you know, with the least amount of hassles. You know, like I started, I had no mentor, just like you, Ken. You say when you started, you know, I started archery bow hunting, and the first time I actually had a shot at a deer, I didn't realize I had a good shot at it.
Mhm.
You know, it was like 10 yards away. You know, it was the perfect shot. Later on, I figured out, oh, I could have shot that one. I didn't know what I didn't know. And then, you know, you start off with, hey, I seen footprints in the ground. You know, that's where I started. Good day. I seen a footprint. That meant there was deer at one time when it was wet. You know, and then he gets what, okay, I seen a deer. Great day. It might have been running in a field half a mile away, but I seen a deer. And then it gets down to where, you know, okay, now you're seeing deer, you know, most of the time out there, and now they're getting in shooting range. And then next thing you know, it's like, okay, certain areas that you go, you expect to see them, may not get a shot every time, but you know, you expect to see them. And, you know, I found sometimes if it's a full moon, yeah, you're wasting your time in the morning because they've been out walking all night. You know, they're not getting up and moving. You know, I like it when there's no moon, because then it's a little darker. They're not moving as much. You know, I know one time when I was walking out, there was snow on the ground, and it was late enough. There's no leaves, anything on the trees. And my fiber optic pins, you know, generally when they quit glowing, it's time to quit. You know, I don't have to look at my watch or anything, because if my pins aren't glowing, I can't see anything anyway.
Right.
And, you know, I found if I turn a light on, all I can see is pins. I can't see past them anyway. So I
Right.
never bothered turning the light on. And this one that I'm looking there, my pins they didn't stop glowing at all. And I found it's got to be, because it looked light to me. Look at my watch. I'm an hour past shooting time. I walked out with no flashlight. It was so bright out. I didn't need a flashlight to go out. So I didn't realize it had gotten dark because it's just so bright from the moon. And, you know, those things, you know, you don't want to set an alarm on your phone, because, you know, then they start going off. And if, you know,
If
I've
you're-
had times.
If you're out in a place like way out in the mountains, like where there's no light pollution from, you know, from like man-made light, that what you're talking about can happen like that, because, you know, the sun goes down, it starts to get dark, but the moon comes up right about the same time. And your eyes adapt to it, and you don't realize that it's that late, because you can still see just as well as you could as the sun went down.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you find yourself walking out without using the flashlight.
yeah. And I've had the opposite too. Middle of the day, I have to turn the lights on my pins because I can't see them, because the canopy is so much that there's no sun getting in to light up my pins.
Mhm.
You know, so it's just kind of one of those, you know, weird things depending on time of year you're in. And, you know, here in Nebraska, we start September 1st and go through December 31st. So we have all kinds of weathers, from hot weather to cool weather to cold weather to blizzards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't generally go out in a blizzard.
Good experience to do. And I was ready when it was time.
I don't generally go out when it's raining either, because it's hard to track. But one time the guy I was hunting with, he wanted to go hunting. It was like, it's not a hard rain, it's just kind of more of a mist, but it's just kind of wet. And I said, I really want to go out, but I knew he's gonna go out, sit in my stand, and kill a deer out of my tree stand. So I went anyway. Sure enough, I shot a deer out of my tree stand. And there's there's almost no blood trail because it's being washed away. It's not a pouring down, but it's, enough that there's no real blood trail. So I'm tracking it by footprints.
Mhm.
And then,
Oh,
so I'm tracking folks in through the field and there were some old railroad tracks that were gone and the trees alongside of it. And I tracked it in there and I found it, I went right up to us. I just watched his footprints. There's no blood trailing, it's footprints because it was that wet. And, then we drug it out, but it's,
You what time that you got to work with to recover them. It's not always blood, it's
right.
just leaves or actual track in the ground.
Mhm.
And but it is a brotherhood, like you say. It's, you can talk to a total freaking stranger about bow hunting, and boom, all of a sudden your best friends sharing emails, and fall rolls around and you're sending pictures of the deer you've killed to each other.
Yeah.
It's just like that. I mean, I've got people that I've never met in person, but are friends with us on Facebook, that when fall shows up, we start sending pictures of rubs. And then, eventually they're sending pictures of deer that they've killed, and we're sending pictures of deer that we killed. And, and it's always, the invitation's always there. Hey, you guys should come up and hunt. I can put you on some good land, stuff like that. It's just a brotherhood. It's a tight knit thing. Everybody just into archery, loves it, and wants to share it with everybody.
Yeah, we all have, cool stories. And, one of my memorable hunts was one morning the sun's coming up as the frost forming on the bow and all the branches. And I'm seeing the sun reflect off of the tree branches. And on my way home, used to be a strip of evergreen trees along there, and they were all frosted over. And that was just so cool. I remember that. And, you remember things like that. And I didn't even see a deer that day.
Yeah. When I was a kid growing up, you'd go all season and not see a deer. And then you'd have a guy come in high school and say, "Hey man, I saw a doe." "Oh wow, you saw a doe? Where were you at?" "I'm not telling you." Because there just weren't any deer, there weren't any deer back in the early 80s.
Mhm.
And now the population is doing great. We got tons of deer. Of course, they're all the size of Labrador retrievers down here, but
Right.
there's plenty of deer. But yeah, there's just
Even have elk.
yeah,
Elk now.
we even have elk out on the East Coast, which is kind of cool. They're hunting them in Kentucky, but they're not hunting them in North Carolina yet. So this coming around.
Yeah, they're supposed to be setting up a lottery to be able to apply, and I don't know how many people they're going to select. I don't know if it's 50 or 100 or whatever, because they brought the elk into North Carolina, Virginia, Pennsylvania, probably about 15 years ago, and they said the first 10 years we're not allowing anybody to hunt them, this and that, and then after 10 years we're going to just see how the population is doing. And you go to Maggie Valley, and there's elk everywhere up there. And so eventually, because there's not enough predators around here big enough to be able to take down, a full-size elk, because we don't have a wolf population here. They say we don't have mountain lions here, but
Officially we don't have
officially we don't, but
officially we don't. It's illegal to kill one.
so the only big predator here is the black bear that we have on the East Coast, which Ken's hunted black bear. You've hunted black bear. I haven't gotten into that arena yet, but Ken's taken down one. The big thing now, since Ken bought some land, our off-season targets are wild hogs, because he has a huge population up there where you're at now, and they're wreaking havoc. And so I want to use a bow to take down some hogs, but he said the majority of the time they just come in at nighttime. So we have to figure out something.
I killed 2 this fall during the day with my bow, but most of the time they go nocturnal. As soon as they realize there's any kind of threat, they just go nocturnal. So it kind of kills it for hunting with bows. Now, when I was listening to your podcast, you saying you were still hunting with some early 2000s PSEs. Is that still your primary go-to?
Yeah, the bow I hunt with is a 2001 PSE. Carrera. And then my second bow is a 2003 PSE Scorpion.
Okay.
And then my recurve is a PSE. And then when I worked at Cabela's, they have, returns of bows. So I managed to get a Bear, one of their snow camo ones. I forget which model it was. I hadn't even set it up yet. But, the returns, there's, the strings will be bad on them, or there's some screws stripped out or something. So, I've had to fix all that. But, I was a PSE dealer for a few years, and I still shoot them, and all my kids all shoot PSEs. We haven't switched off PSE.
That's what you're shooting.
Now, I would imagine with your passion for archery, you could have anything new off the shelf that's out there right now if you wanted it, but you continue to shoot those older model PSEs because.
Well, they work good.
Yeah.
I can work on them myself. My
Yeah.
bow press is an old Apple press, so I can still press them and work on them.
Mhm.
I make my own strings. I've been making strings since, I become a PSE dealer, and since 2001. So I make my own strings and cables for it, and it just, it works. I don't need shorter axle bow that's harder to shoot. I don't need it to be faster. The Carrera is rated at 320 feet per second. And that's a 2001 bow.
Yep. They know exactly where I'm going with this question.
Okay.
I have a collection of Martin Onzas from like the 2011 or 2010s to 2012s. I have 6 of them. I won an Elite 35, and I've shot all kinds of bows out there. And I cannot find anything out there that I can shoot as good, that is as forgiving as that model year of Onza. It shoots, 335 to 345, depending on which year that you get. And to me, for my draw length, my size, I can't find a better hunting bow out there. I love that thing. I mean, and I'm just as accurate as I can be with it. And now you're talking about a bow that's over 10 years old, 12 years old is what they're sneaking up on. And like you say, why change? It does exactly what it's supposed to do. It does exactly what I asked of it. I mean, I did a video shooting a saltine cracker at 50 yards with one of them. So why do I need to stop shooting that if I can do that? And with a 468 grain arrow, it blows right through any deer that I shoot at. So, I mean, the new bows, yeah, they're great, they're fantastic, but I haven't found anything that I can pick up and feel like I can go to the woods with and kill deer efficiently as I am with these things, because I'm just comfortable.
No, it's kind of like with me. I shoot the PSC Stinger 3Gs, and these are 10, 11 years old because I got it right before.
Yeah, you got the 2013 model. Yeah.
Was it 13?
Yeah.
And I still shoot it. That's what I've killed deer with. I've killed deer in North Carolina, Missouri. And I like that model so much because it's still a solid limb. I don't care for the split limbs. And that's just me. I just find it's more comfortable for me, or I don't know. And it might just be the eye appearance of it. But for me to get into it, who had no idea what I was getting into, Ken was telling me, just go to Bass Pro or Cabela's or somewhere and just put some bows in your hand, see what feels comfortable. And the best way that I can describe that to somebody else is like prior to that, I played a lot of golf, and it was kind of the same thing. I'd go and put golf clubs in my hands. And certain ones would feel right, and certain ones just didn't feel right, or didn't have that line of sight that I, just felt good to me. Well, I just kept going around and put my hands on this PSE Stinger, and I was like, this is it. And I wasn't going to go and spend $1,000 on a bow, and I didn't know if I'd even like it or not. Well, was it 2 years later, I bought a second one. And so I got 2 PSE Stingers, solid limbs, and I can't imagine going to anything else. I feel comfortable with it. I'm confident with it. I'm taking down quite a few deer now with it. And I've gotten my wife into shooting a bow now too. And she has a PSC. I can't remember what model it is, but it's like a youth women's model. I can't remember which one it is, but and so kind of like with you, having the archery 101, it's kind of like I'm going back and trying to teach my wife now. And it's interesting to see even how far I've come in shooting a bow from when I first started. Because like just relearning all the first basic step of
Where to shoot?
Well,
Sorry.
just to shoot the bow, but anchor point, peep sight, and lining your pins up, and just that kind of stuff. Where now I just take it for granted. It just comes so natural now that I don't think about it, and that's why when I'm with my wife and I'm trying to teach her, it's like I have to kind of go back a little bit, because I'm like, okay, how did I start? And because it was almost like Ken teaching me. I'm sure he's like,
Fundamentals,
yeah, just teaching basic stuff of anchor points and
Stop squeezing the grip.
loose grip, put it, having it in the groove, and so now to take it another step, we got my 4-year-old daughter a little youth bow, because she had a toy bow for about a year and shooting around the house. So we finally, this past Christmas, we got her a actual bow. And so once, I think probably here in the next couple of weeks or so, she's been kind of playing with it, but I haven't like gotten into teaching her anything. It's just more or less, all right, put the arrow on the string, pull it back and let it go. And but hopefully, maybe we'll get her into that arena. I did get her into blood trailing, because I shot a couple of deer this year on our property, and I got my daughter to blood trail with me. So that was
Cool.
very interesting. So here she is, and at that time she wasn't even 4 yet. She was, oh gosh, what, 3, almost 4. She was a few months from being 4, but she was out there with me and put my headlamp down on where the blood was. I was like, all right, keep following the blood, keep following the blood. And she'd stop, Daddy, there's more, Daddy, there's more. And so it's those memories too that I'm starting to cherish, is with my kids. Because I got a ton of memories with these two guys, but now I'm starting another set with my kids, and I enjoy that part of it.
What I enjoy is seeing what I taught him, and then him teach his wife, and then him teach his kids. I love to see that. It just continues to generation through generation. And the beauty of it is that all the struggle, like you didn't have a mentor, I didn't have a mentor, and all the struggling that went on with learning it, they didn't have to do that. And now his wife doesn't have to do that, and his kids don't have to do that.
A little bit each time.
Yeah. Each person just passes it on, and it makes it easier for the new people coming into the sport.
Yeah, and that's why it's enjoyable to teach. And kids, they're just so excited when they draw that bow back and they shoot. And let's start off with a balloon, and that balloon pops. It's like, wow, they get excited. I used to help out at a lot of the sports shows, and they'd always have, the one group always had balloons for the kids to shoot. So I got pretty good at aiming for them, because they'll hold the bow, I'll hold their hand, and they'll hold the string, I'll pull back, and then got pretty good at aiming for them. And then when they let go, the balloon pops, and now they're excited. I want to do it some more. I want to do it some more. I'd spend hours on my knees, helping, 3, 4, 5-year-olds, shooting. And that was just a lot of fun. And I know my youngest, he picked up archery, and he just kind of went. And he'd, when I had the store, he'd come out, he'd shoot all day long. He had a whole pile of, mismatched arrows, and he'd just get there and shoot and shoot and shoot, for hours. He'd be over there.
Yeah, I would say that about the only time I don't shoot my bow is usually January and February. And March is usually I'll start up again. I'll start practicing, and I'll shoot at least 2-3 days a week. And I'm only shooting for maybe 15-20 minutes. And a lot of it's just keeping that muscle memory going. And
Right.
Now I had all intentions. I even went and set up and everything, because in North Carolina we have what they call an urban archery hunt, and it runs from mid-January to mid-February. But went out there, set up stuff, but every opportunity I had to go, it was raining. We've had more rain this time of year than I've ever seen. It's crazy. It's the most rain I've seen in years during January and February, which is a little odd, but so I never even got to go out there and hunt. But yeah, usually, because leading up to and during hunting season, I'm shooting my bow consistently, and it's just one another aspect of it is just staying on top of it and
Efficiency.
yeah, efficiency. To me, again, I just take it back, just muscle memory, where you don't even have to think about it. You're pulled back, so your whole focus is on, all right, I'm wanting this deer to get to this angle so I can have this shot, and I'm not even thinking, when I'm pulling my bow back.
If you get to the point where when you're hunting and you shoot the deer and you don't remember drawing the bow, lining up the sights, you just remember the point of release, then you've got that muscle memory.
Yeah.
Because it just becomes an extension of your body, and the whole process is just muscle memory. And you just focus on that shot and executing that shot, then that's because you've done that.
Right.
You've shot that bow over and over and over, and it's just an extension of yourself. And before we skip this, I gotta give him a hard time. Archery goes down two paths nowadays. I'm in the de-evolution path. I'm devolving. I'm working towards sticks and strings and going further and further into more difficult ways of getting the arrow to where I want it to be. The other path is technology and the latest and greatest that's out there to be purchased to get the arrow to hit the point that you're aiming at. Brad has taken that path. Tell him your rig. Tell him how your bow's set up and your sight and everything that you have.
We got a PSE Bow Madness, and like Ken was saying, when you pick it up, it just feels right. And that was the same scenario there. Added the Garmin sight, and the reason for that was I haven't really hunted around a whole lot of fields before. So one of the deer in Missouri, I ended up shooting it, and Ken's like, "Where's your stand at?" And I was like, "Oh, it was right here." And he's like, "Oh, that was like 40 yards." And I was like, "No, that was like 30 yards." And I used my 30-yard pin, and just by the grace of God, somehow or another, made a great shot on the animal. And so I realized that me judging distances is not accurate. I have drawn my rings. I'm like, that's a that bush right there's 20, so that must be 40. And Ken's able to extrapolate and use a lot of intelligence, and I which I think keeps the group entertaining. But so the Garmin was part necessity for the.
It ranges for him.
Yes.
So he holds it
Yeah.
out there, puts the sign, pushes the button, tells him how far it is.
And it doesn't make a good shot or not, but it does minimize your margin of error. And I think I'm one of those people that need that. You guys probably do not. So,
Well, I just finally got one of these, a rangefinder, last year. And I hadn't even used it for deer yet. I took it out. We had where we was hunting. It wasn't a spot we could do from archery. So where they was coming through, we had to be back far enough so we might see them. And I was able to range, where we could see them on camera. They're coming out. But I just always, learned how to judge the yardage. And what always gets people is this: well, when you're shooting downhill out of a tree or uphill, you got to aim low. Well, no, you need to learn how to judge yardage. And easiest way to explain it is all carpenters know a 3, 4, 5 triangle. That gives you a right angle. So there was one time I was on the top of a hill, the trail's down at the bottom. I was in a ladder stand. So I was, pretty high above the trail. And, I knew that that was a 20-yard trail. It looked like it was 40 or 50 yards away because of the size of the deer, because I was so far at the angle distance. Well, deer come out, I shot up for 20 and I got it because it was a 20-yard shot. And when you think about it, a lot of people, when you ask them, okay, let's say I am 40 feet up from the trail, and the trail's 30 yards away from where I'm at base of my tree, and then it's 50 yards down the other way. What do I shoot it for? Do I shoot it for 30, 40, 50? What do I shoot it for? A lot will say, well, shoot it for 50 because it's 50 yards away. Well, they just shot over it because it's shoot for 30. They don't realize that gravity works on the horizontal distance. So it traveled 30 yards, so it's going to drop for 30 yards, not for 50. And once you understand that, then it's like, okay, I'm pointing uphill, but it's not the distance it is. Uphill, it's a little hard to judge that distance. Downhill, I always pick a tree on the trail and follow up and judge distance to the tree horizontal. Same thing when I draw back horizontal, get my anchor point, because that is my form, not dropping my arm. And now then I just start bending down until my pin gets where I want it to go. Because that's the form. I always draw horizontal first and then bend down, because otherwise you're trying to bend down. It just doesn't work very well. When a really close, that's really hard shot.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the ones that are like inside of 10 yards, right underneath you, those are tough.
For your wife.
Yeah.
6-yard one.
Yeah, Christy, my wife, she bow hunts as well. She had a really nice buck come in, and him and her are constantly throwing darts at each other all season over stuff. She had this nice buck come in at 6 yards, and she shot right over the top of his back. But
Not once, a couple times.
yeah, a couple times. So they throw venom at each other.
I love her to death.
But anyway, if my wife gets to see this, thank you for your support, honey, and let me spend all the time away from home. She's very supportive. What I do as a technique, especially when I'm hunting on public or somewhere that I haven't been before, as the sun starts to come up in the morning hunt, or as soon as I get set up in a tree stand in an afternoon hunt, I'll sit there and go, okay, that tree is 10 yards. That tree is 20 yards. And like Brad was talking about, I'll start, in my mind, drawing that arc and everything around it and setting reference points. So when the deer comes, I don't have to sit there and try to figure out, it's like, okay, I know that tree is 20 yards. Boom. I don't have to go, well, how far away is that deer? So I'm in the center of the bullseye, and I'm putting those rings out around me, 10, 20, 30 yards. And just sit there all day and just memorize those landmarks. So when the time comes, because unlike some of the people when we first started this who thought we just went to the woods and shot deer, when the time comes, there's usually just a few seconds, that you have that shot window to pull that off. And you don't want to be sitting there trying to do the advanced calculus of, well, how far away is that? You've been sitting there all day. You should already have that figured out.
Especially
Right.
You don't even know they're there. I had that happen a few times where I'm just sitting there, scanning, and all of a sudden I look, boom, there's a deer right there.
No time to judge yardage. You got to know it.
Right. Well, and like you, just said that you got a rangefinder for this year. Well, I do that as soon as I get in my stand. I'm taking my rangefinder. All right, that tree's this tree's that. Boom, boom, boom. That way. And kind of the same thing, then I'll memorize. I'll sit there, I kind of make it a game. All right, what tree was that again? And that way, when the deer do come in, it's kind of almost the same thing as shooting your bow all the time. I don't have to think about it. It's almost like, all right, that one's 15 yards. And I'm just pulling back and I'm just focusing on where I want to hit that deer. And Ken, that's something that he's drilled into my head over the years of, pick a specific hair on that deer that you want to hit. And that's what I did with those 2 deer that I shot back to back. For some reason, and these guys can tell you, first 5 years, I did not release I did release one arrow because I was walking in.
You had a drought, a terrible drought of 5 years.
5 years of nothing. And the first year I got my property, I went in December and shot a doe. And 2 days later, I went back out there, shot another doe. So I was like, okay, well, this isn't too bad. Well, then we went to Missouri and same thing, shot a doe. And 20 minutes later, shot a buck. And then this year, I was out there. And now this is on my property, shot a doe. 30 minutes later, shot an 8-pointer. So it's like, I go through a drought, but I make up for it real quick.
The karma's caught up with it.
It's like,
You put in your time.
so, because I still remember to this day that year that you and I went out hunting, and it was in October, and you hadn't shot a deer yet.
Mhm.
And Ken and I were coming out of the woods. He's like, man, this sucks. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, I haven't shot a deer yet. I look over at him like, really? We're having this conversation. And he's like, how do you do this?
He went years. I went like a month and a half. And I was like having withdrawals. But we all have. It's really weird, watching how we all pick places to hunt. We all hunt the same geographical locations, but the spots that we pick to set up is different. And I've noticed this over our time together. I will go find the nastiest, thickest hole that I can get into.
And might have a shot zone about that big.
Yeah, we have a tiny little hole looking right into a trail or right into a crossing. And I will sit there all day, and I call it looking into the living room. Because I'm looking into a spot where it's no bigger than a living room or maybe smaller. And it'll drive me nuts after 2 or 3 days of doing that. But it's really, really thick, and the shot opportunity is very short. But because it's so thick, deer seem to be more active during the daylight hours because of that,
Right.
that environment. They don't like to do that. They don't hunt like that. They'll go set up on more open areas with trails and creek crossings and stuff like that. So and some scrape shrubs and stuff like that. And it's weird to watch people's personalities come into play with how they hunt. And that's just something that I've noticed between the three of us.
And for me, it's, the terrain features are going to help maximize the chance that you're going to get a deer. But I think you're going to see a larger, higher caliber deer in that scenario versus, for me, time is so short. I'm looking at a little bit of volume aspect, not necessarily, anything that comes by any means, but that's kind of my rationale for picking some of those kind of locations. And two, go as far as you can comfortably, that you can, put the effort in to go a little farther away from the parking lot. But hunting near the parking lot has succeeded. It's amazing.
A lot of times, I just go gut feeling. We were out in Missouri, and we were doing our evening hunt. And because we have quite a few different places in Missouri that we go to. And we go to this one place, and we're walking in, and it's only 200 yards maybe from the parking lot.
It's right there.
Well, the three of us were walking along, and I got to see this path, to my right. And I was like, and it looks pretty well used. I'm like, guys, I'm gonna go check this out. And so they keep on going, and you guys are still hiking half a mile back there or something like that.
You can see the truck. You can see the truck.
Yeah, when I set up my stand, I can see the truck in the parking lot. But I think that's what made it interesting to me, because there was so much, looked like heavy movement through there. And then once I got back in there, I could see fresh rubs, fresh scrapes. And then as I'm standing there, stand on my back, bow in my hand, I'm looking around, looking for a good tree. And I turn, and there's 2 does standing there. So I'm like, well, it must be in a pretty good area. So I set up my stand, saw a couple more that night, right before dark. Well, then the next morning, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go back to that spot. And I sat there not even an hour, had a doe come out, and I was gonna take a shot on her. Well, next thing I know, I hear something else coming. Well, here comes this big old 8-pointer, which I call him Cyclops, because it looked like one eyeball was totally jacked up. He got speared in the eye or something. Well, he comes out. So I'm like, all right, well, shoot him, see blood go. He takes off. And so, of course, texting these guys, hey, just shot one. And Ken always gets a kick out of my excitement. Like when I shoot something, it's kind of weird. It's like
The little circuit breaker pops.
yeah. So I'm texting them and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go walk my 200 yards back to the truck, put my gear away, and I'm gonna go start blood trailing. Well, as I get back out on the path, I see Ken coming. So we walk up to the truck and we're like, all right, well, let's go look for your deer. So I take him back to where the big blood pile was. I'll let you take it from here.
And his enthusiasm, we start blood trailing the deer. We cross this deep ravine, come up the other side. Right now, before we do this, I'm standing at the base of this tree. I said, go to the last landmark that you saw this deer run by. Just go stand there and I'll come to you. So he goes down, he crosses the ravine, he goes over and he stands by this tree. And he is just like adamant that that was where the deer ran by this tree right here. So I pick up the blood trail, cross the ravine, come up, turn left and go towards him. There's no blood. There's nothing. Go over there where he's at. We search. Nothing. Can't find any blood. All right. Well, I guess, we'll have to just do a body search for this thing. We go back to the ravine. He goes down into the ravine, goes up on the other side. And I'm like, I'm going to turn right instead of left coming out of the ravine because it looked like there was a trail that went that way. Turned right and there's blood. And the deer went to the right. It didn't turn left. It went to the right. And then it went out through there and into the field and then turned left way out into the field and ran up onto this hill. But the adrenaline was kicking.
Mm-hmm.
And what he remembered happening was not what really happened with the deer. But to get back to the parking lot scenario, I fall victim to this all the time. You always want to tell yourself, I got to get further away. The more I get away from the parking area, the better chances are there's going to be deer because there's fewer people. 2 years ago, it was a year he killed this deer in Missouri. We had hunted down on the edge of this cut on this cornfield, and there had been people coming in and out on this public land spot. It was getting a lot of pressure. And the night before, I'd gone and looked at the aerial photo, and I was like, I'm going to go on the back side of this cut soybean field instead on the edge of this because there's a pinch of CRP that comes to the cut soybean field. Well, when you go out of state to hunt, you don't get a lot of sleep because you're constantly driving to public land places on
Right.
this day 5, and I'm tired and exhausted. We pull up to the parking spot, and instead of walking all the way down the soybean field and come around the back end and into the edge of the tree line, like a moron, I'm going to cut straight through the CRP to go to that pinch point. I get maybe 75 yards inside the CRP, jump up this huge 8-pointer that's got a doe bedded down by a tiny little pond. And she takes off running and he takes off after her. And those deer had been laying there by that little pond and that CRP less than 100 yards from the parking lot where everybody got out that morning and walked right past them, going deep into the public land. Those deer were laying there listening to people get out of their truck and walk by. Mm-hmm. And of course, because I was tired, I bumped them up out of there. If I'd gone all the way around and set up, I had a chance to maybe get them up when they walked out either in the evening. But the moral of the story is hunt the deer where they are, not where you want them to be.
Yeah.
Well, going back to that story of, I shot that buck that was 200 yards from the parking lot. I learned a lot that day because I believe what happened is I hit him high in the shoulder and we tracked him for over 2 miles and never found him. But one, it was a very good learning experience for me, and you said it was good for
Tracking,
you.
you
Just
know,
tracking. I mean, there was times we were just finding little drops of blood, and we were almost like leapfrogging each other, just so that we would, you know, stay on it. But we found some good bedding areas. We found that one that it looked
Yeah.
like. I mean, we called that the buck nest
Yeah.
because it looked like a nest. It looked like, you know, there's a bunch of all branches and trees and everything, but it was hollowed out underneath there. And there was deer hair in there, and you could tell there was a big buck that used that nest. And
We learned a lot from that. Deer don't run in a straight line. Deer know where people walk. Deer know where people won't go. This deer made 2 90-degree turns, perfect 90-degree turns. And each 90-degree turn took him into thicker cover. And then as he came out of that cover, he made a 90-degree turn that took him across CRP and put him back into the thicker cover where we found that buck nest. And his entire route, it was not the shortest path. It was not the shortest path at all. His entire route kept him away from where people could see him and from where people walked and where he knew people would be. And that was that was a huge learning experience. It was like, you know, they know where people travel, and they will get themselves away from that or put themselves in a position where they can watch it and see you come in and out and know when it's safe to move. They're a lot smarter than people give them credit for.
And the thing that when we found that area, it wasn't a huge area where he was living and bedding, but it was safe, it was logical. The wind was, you know, played in perfectly. It made sense generation after generation.
It's a little pocket.
yeah,
And
and
same
it was
thing
all
with-
surrounded by CRP, and it was just that little pocket there that he had definite range of seeing
Oh yeah,
in all directions.
safe.
So
Southwest wind coming up over the top of the hill, rolling in, so he could see anything coming from the east and the south. And he could smell anything behind him coming over the hill from the southwest.
Because you crawled in there and actually laid down in the bed just to kind of see, you know, this makes sense. This is why they're here every time.
It was bulletproof. It was a bulletproof place for a deer to bed. It'd be impossible to try to get there and get him.
yeah, you'd have to get them going in or coming out because there's no way of, and you'd have to do it by ground too.
Yeah.
Because there's no trees.
And that's a lot of things. A lot of non-hunters don't understand that all a buck has to do to never get killed by a hunter is just don't get up until it's dark. Just don't get up until it's dark. You know, if he lays there in his bed and waits until the sun goes down and gets up, he'll never get shot by a legal hunter. It's that simple.
And how many times have you jumped a deer walking through the woods and you're looking like, that makes sense.
That's why it's there.
But for me, I can't see that. I can't plot that out and say, you know, given this wind, you know, a deer should be here. You're real good about that, about scouting and being able to deduce that. But so many times after the fact, I'm like, ding, light bulb. Yeah, that makes complete sense.
That's what
But we keep building on everything
Absolutely.
that we've learned over the years. We definitely share notes. The thing that worked for you was shaking the hell out of the tree.
Oh, that's worked out several times.
Yeah. Brad, well, I'll let you tell it. When this was in Missouri, wasn't it?
It's happened in a couple places, not so much in the southeast, but the ground noise, and you had an experience too to piggyback off all this. He had a buck coming in and was grunting, was doing all the right things, and the buck just wasn't buying it. Dropped your phone, buck came over, ended up getting shot. And so I'd heard these kind of stories and videos and THP, and you know, everybody, you know, make it as real as possible. So this past year, I was hunting an area and got out my grunt, did a little rattle, shook the tree right next to me. And I mean, I couldn't even put the rattle down before the buck was straight into me. And so he ended up, you know, coming around behind me in this little creek and then came back out and brought him home. And but it's the pawing of the ground, the scraping of the tree, the making it as real as possible.
Well, if you've ever watched bucks spar, really go at it, it's not just grunting and clacking of antlers. I mean, they are making a racket. They're kicking the leaves up, they're bumping into bushes, they're making all kinds of noise. And I think especially here on the East Coast, where there's a ton of pressure on public land hunting deer, they hear that grunt call and just that grunt call, and they're like, oh, well, that's, that's Bobby over in a tree on that ridge. They hunt that in the fall. They'll go over there, because they know when there's really sparring going on, that they'll hear the leaves and grunting and clacking of antlers and
Snapping of branches.
Yeah, and all of that. They'll hear the whole thing. It's you gotta sell it, they get
Right.
smart.
And then that's the sad part. And I got sucked into it too when I first got into the bow hunting aspect. Is there's so many gimmicks that that people are selling in the stores that oh, buy this will get deer and blah blah blah. And when I got my buck this year, it was the first time that I've ever had a grunt tube per se kind of work here in the Southeast. Prior to that, like Ken said, as soon as you blow on that thing, deer are going the opposite way. They're not even coming close to you. But this year, I think it was just because it was during the rut, and I had nothing to lose. It was like, well, I may as well try it out, because he was still far enough away that I didn't have a shot on him. But I was like, well, we'll give it a shot. And I actually grunted, and he responded to it. And that's the first time I've ever seen a grunt tube work. Now in Missouri, it works a little bit more, but again, it has to usually be during the rut, and just there's times when to use those I guess I call them tools, but the majority of the time, if you can just do where it's natural, like with rattling the trees or scraping the ground and stuff like that, just making stuff sound what was actually going on in the woods. I think you said one time that you were making all kinds of noise setting up your stand, and next thing you know, there was a deer that came in to investigate what was going on. And like, what's all this noise going on, And so I think you could sometimes go overboard with, and like I said, I succumbed to it, in the beginning years of my archery seasons and stuff, where, oh, let me buy this will work, or let me go get that, or I've seen this on TV, or
I think we all have closet stuff like that.
yeah. And the majority of the time
Like comes up.
it never comes out, because I rather use what's out there in nature. Like sometimes I'll just grab a bunch of sticks and take it up into the stand with me, and once in a while I'll just start throwing sticks on the ground just to make it sound like something's natural out there. Anything that it might be a possibility to help, I'm gonna try it out. Like I hunted on the ground in a ghillie suit, and I had deer close enough. I coming close enough to me that I could hear them breathing, and that was the exciting part for me right there. Just like, oh my gosh, I can hear this deer. It's no more than 10 yards away from me. I'm on the same level as that deer is, and I'm watching them breathe, and you can see their eyes real close. It's like, man, this is really cool.
I've got a video I'll send you from this fall. I killed a deer way back in some public land and ended up having to pack him out because I was hunting solo. These guys were doing their own thing. They couldn't help me. And I was so far back when I had this thing packaged up and in my pack, had his head strapped onto the back of the pack and everything. I'm getting ready to go, and I hear something, and I turn around, and there's a 6-pointer standing there looking at me, and he's probably 25 yards away. So I get my phone out, and this little buck, he circles up above me, walks around, comes down, goes around the tree. He ends up probably within 10 yards of me. I got it all on video. And he's just curious of like what I am and what's going on with that deer head on that pack. And he's just kind of hanging around. And it's because where I was hunting, there's a lot of hikers. So the deer are used to seeing hikers on the trail, on the path. But here's this in the woods next to a deer, and he's just absolutely curious of what's going on there. Now, granted, there was a lot of effort to get there to where the deer were that comfortable with the person. Let's just put it this way, it's not a place that I would ever consider shooting a doe and trying to get her out. It is, it's like Remy Warren calls the suffering. It's part of the challenge is the suffering that makes it more rewarding when you accomplish it, when you achieve your goal. And I think I fall victim to that. You know, it's like I'm always like, hey, one more ridge over, guys. Let's go one more ridge over. A little bit further in there. Let's go a little further. He's like, hey, we're not.
Yeah,
We're
or not.
yeah. Travis is hunting the parking lot, and I'm hunting 3 states back.
It's been a rewarding journey, and it's not over yet. It's, you know, each year
Mhm.
you evolve and you figure out what little things, and you learn from other people, each other hunter, and what's working for them and what can you glean. And that's what I like. There's not a finish line. There's always
The next
push,
goal.
push harder, go a little farther, don't go a little farther, learn more. It's that never ending.
Increase the challenge.
Mhm.
Go traditional. Get a recurve, fellas. You know,
Let's go farther.
make your own redwood bow, you know,
Yeah.
your red oak bow. All those things you can make it a little harder, a little more challenging.
Oh, it's all archery, you know, like you was alluding to earlier, you know, a stick with a string flaying another stick, that's archery.
Mhm.
And what form it takes is up to you, you know.
Mhm.
It's just all personal journey, and that's what's nice about it, is we can take it wherever we want to go.
Right, and it's almost like it's ingrained in our DNA, and I don't want to sound too hokey saying this, but I found a couple of arrowheads or lattice points while I was out hunting before. You know, and you reach down and you pick that up and you're looking at it and you're thinking, okay, this was right around the last ice age, you know, 8,000-9,000 years ago. It's when some guy slung this at something with his atlatl. And he was out here on the same patch of dirt that I'm on. Now he was shooting at a completely different animal than I'm out here hunting, but he was doing the same thing that I'm doing on the same patch of earth 8,000 to 9,000 years ago.
Mhm.
And, you know, it's like we're wired to do it. You know, it's like we're supposed to be hunting. It's in our DNA to go out there and do that. And when you accomplish it and you're, you know, standing there over your deer that you killed, it's, you know, there's a level of success and a feeling of accomplishment that it's organic. It's natural.
It's almost like a feeling of self-reliance.
Yeah.
You know, you don't
Yeah.
have to say, you know, dang, I gotta go to the grocery store and get some meat.
Mhm.
Hopefully, you know, to have what I have or want. Well, it was like the deer I got this year. The day and this is on my own property where I'm being kind of picky. I'm not just going out there and shoot whatever I want, because I'm trying to manage it to a point that when my kids do get old enough and I take them out there, it's like, all right, shoot whatever you want, because there's plenty of it, plenty of deer out
Right.
here. But this year, my wife, you know, it was middle of November, and as I'm getting ready to walk out the door, my wife's like, just shoot something. We need meat in the freezer. Okay, I'll shoot something. So it's nice that, like you said, it's kind of in our DNA, but it's also nice now that, you know, the way the world is going, it's having that, I guess,
Security.
asset security, you know, something there that if something happened where, you know, the supply chains and all that, you know what, I can go out in my backyard and go down in my woods and I can supply food for my family. And that's something that, you know, I've tried to get across to other people, you know, that I don't want to call them, you know, PETA, blah, blah, blah. You know, how can you go out there and shoot an animal? Well, it's not just going out there and shooting an animal, it's going out there and providing food for my family. This is what we eat. You know, it's not just a sport.
It's
You know,
nature's grocery store.
it's what, you know, if I don't intend to eat it, I don't shoot it.
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
except a coyote or a hog.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to shoot those just because here, definitely in the Southeast, we are overrun with coyotes down here. And But that's how I look at it, is it's a self-reliance thing now. And as my kids get older, and same thing with my wife, you know, more people I can help and get them to that point where they're efficient, a hunter and stuff like that. That's just more people that's living under my roof that we can go out and even get more food.
Right.
So that's why I hunt, or one of the aspects of why I hunt. But the other aspect of it is, you know, just hanging out with these guys. Unfortunately, our lives this past season has been totally crazy. And so none of us got to hunt. Well, you two guys hunted together a few times, but I just never had the opportunity with being able to get over this way to hunt. And but we're definitely on the list to go to Missouri again this year. So
Yes, we are. Glad you brought that up.
Yes.
Glad you brought that up. And just to segue, you were talking about your why and your why. I've actually got a different why. And all these are good reasons. I like the challenge that you don't have that safe. Everything in life has got validation and safety features, and you can go out there and, you know, set up your tree stand wrong and there's consequences. You can do everything and get a deer, a wonderful deer. You can do everything right and come home with nothing. And so I like the not risk, but the
Uncertainty.
Yeah, the uncertainty. The, you know, first time hunter can bag, you know, a one whatever. And so that's everybody's got a little different why. And so hopefully one of those will resonate with your audience.
or even hunting, just to go out and scout.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, I almost got bit by a rattlesnake going out to scout, and I was by myself because I think both of you guys were working. And I was going out there, and I actually have it on videotape of me jumping over this rattlesnake. Now, I'd already walked by it because I went to go set up a camera. I was kind of doing this filming segment of me going to pull in. So I mess with my camera. I go set it up, and as I turn around to walk back, there's this rattlesnake laid right out. I'm like, oh my, and I'm jumping. I mean, it shows me jumping and saying a few explicit words. And so the thing is, where I was at, we're 2 hours from a hospital that would have been able to handle me. So I was probably going to call in for my own airlift out myself because I was like, all right, these are my coordinates. Send the helicopter here.
Yeah, we got a few rattlesnake copperhead stories to share. But that'll, no matter how tired you are or how sleepy you are, that'll get you moving, get you awake, get you moving.
Yeah.
I definitely hiked up that mountain, no problem that day.
Yeah.
And it was the middle of July too, so
It's adrenaline pop.
yes.
What Brad was alluding to, the uncertainty of it. I think all hunters and even people that fishermen are at their core optimists. Because if you say, okay, especially bow hunters, here's a bow, there's 14,000 acres of public land, and you have a 30-yard circle that you're going to sit in the center of to try to kill a deer. I mean, the odds of that is just ridiculous. So you have to be an optimist to say, I'm going to spend all of this money, all of this time, and all of this physical effort to go out there and try to accomplish this, you know, this task, when it's just overwhelming when you look at the sheer, I mean, because all the deer has to do is go, I'm going to turn left. Instead of going right like he's gone for the last 3 weeks, or something scares him and he runs the other way. So in order for us to keep going back and doing that, I think at the core, you have to be an optimist to think that, well, today's the day, today's the day, today's the day. Because if it wasn't, after 5 years, you'd stay home.
That's right.
But it's just being outside too, or being in the woods, being in nature. I love that more than anything. Just getting out there and seeing new ground, new territory. Like Ken said, he went to a spot that probably nobody's walked on for probably 1,000 years. And I think that's what I like about it too. You know, hunting new areas when we go to Missouri, and planning stuff out, scouting those areas. I enjoy that probably just as much as I do sitting in a tree waiting for a deer. I don't know, plus it's such a detachment from our jobs that we do.
Yeah.
Our jobs, sometimes we're in high stress situations, and it's definitely a release from that, and not even having to think about that. Disconnecting from society, I guess, if you want to call it that, and just being out in nature. That's probably what I enjoy the most out of everything.
I enjoy the scout. He's talking about scouting. I enjoy looking at Google Earth and a topo map for hours on end, and say, okay, this should be a place that a deer should bed. And it could be Missouri, half the country away from us, and then go out there, scout it. And I actually did this with a spot. There was this particular spot that I was looking at for about 3 years. And we finally get out there and we go to hunt it. And I walked to this spot that I had put a pin on Google Earth and said, there will be a buck bed right there. And I walked in there, and there was the biggest, nastiest buck bed with rubs everywhere. And I mean, just that right there was just a big accomplishment of killing a big deer. Is that, I read the sign, I looked at the topo, I looked at, the area, and I'm like, there should be a deer right here. If I was a deer would bed right here. And you drive halfway across the country, walk into that spot, and what you thought would happen has actually happened. And
then there's times it's totally opposite.
yeah, there's times you walk in
they're not going to be here.
yeah, you walk in there and there's some homeless guy laying there.
I would say to be a proficient, successful bow hunter, you have to be willing to put in time. Time practicing your bow, time putting in the scouting, time, just going to different places, putting, as I call it, boots on the ground. It's not that you're just going to walk out and sit in a tree and shoot something, on that first time you go out there.
There are people that do it.
Yeah, there's some people that do it, but I have to say that I didn't know when I first started this journey with these two guys and getting into bow hunting that, at first it's like, man, there is so much to learn, and there is, but you have to be willing to put forth the time and effort and energy into it, or else you're not going to be successful. And I'm thinking maybe this first 5 years, the reason why I didn't is because I was just learning. I was still learning a new way of hunting. It wasn't I didn't know how to hunt. It was just a totally different way than what I was brought up and raised of how to hunt, And now that, it's been 10 years that we've all been hunting together, it's like I almost have like an encyclopedia full of knowledge in my head now that I've learned, and I'm continuing to learn. There's not going to be a day where I say, well, I know everything about bow hunting. It's never going to happen. And because you're always going to learn something new by talking to different people and just asking questions, like a big topic that I think we talked about, I think last year was what kind of broadheads are we using? I use fixed, they use mechanicals. What's your opinion on that? What's my opinion why I use fixed blades?
And that's the benefit of hunting in a group with a group of guys, is that we can learn from each other's success and each other's failures. Some of us, like my big thing is tuning the bow, the arrows, and momentum, kinetic energy, all that stuff. I'm no ranch fairy guy. I'm not going to throw a 800 grain arrow out there, but my big thing is the bow and the tuning, and that is what I put a lot of energy in, along with scouting and stuff. Brad's kind of the latest and greatest gear that's out there and things that are coming up. He'll say, hey, what do you think about this? And he'll get it and he'll try it and we'll see if it works or not. And then Travis is out there. He's checking out property on the eastern part of North Carolina and constantly looking for new ideas. And we're sending videos of other people hunting back and forth. And if we see something that works, we share it. And so it's not just one person trying to learn new techniques and get better as a hunter. It's all three of us working together and we all gain from each other's success.
And not only are we learning off of each other, then I might talk to somebody and learn something from this person. And guess what? I'm sharing it with these two guys.
Yeah.
Hey, this guy's
Right.
telling me this and learning this. And I'm like, that's interesting. And so I talked to these guys, they've gotten into the saddle hunting over the last 2 seasons now, I think it is. And so I haven't jumped into that arena yet either, but I'm kind of like one of the persons that I like to sit back and see how things work out, see if they like the person.
We're the guinea pigs.
So-
We're the guinea pigs. We'll get you a saddle. It's a matter of time.
So, but now that I've seen, they've hunted with saddles for 2 years now.
I know where to sit on a saddle.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, that was a no-brainer for me.
So that's another thing, saddle hunting. But like I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of getting into the still hunt, hunting on the ground and stuff. And a lot of that is watching, the THP guys, they do the ground hunting. And I don't think Zach has been at a tree stand for, I don't know, 4 years, something like that, I'm guessing. So it's just new techniques and new strategies that I'm willing to try out, and just, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, I can always go back and hop in a tree stand again.
Right.
Like Brad said, it's always evolving. It's always
Mhm.
evolving. When we started out, our gear was anywhere between 25 and 30 pounds with our tree stands, our sticks and everything, right?
Mhm.
With the saddles, 1 stick or 2 sticks and some aiders, I'm down to like 9 pounds with the platform and everything, just 9 pounds. And I can go in the woods way back in public and set up and hunt and do my thing. So it's a constant state of evolution. You never get to the finish line and say, here, I'm done, and this is how it's going to be from now on, unless you find the perfect buck, like what you're talking about.
Yeah. No, I always start, ground hunting. I was hunting this property, and I seen this deer bedded along the farmer's, like there was a little road run there, and a little patch of grass running along the side of the road. And so I took off my boots, got my socks on, and I'm sneaking up, and I'm on my ground, belly crawling up to this deer. And I get there and I realize I can't shoot it if I wanted to, because one, the cover's gone now. The cover is only about a foot high. I can't kneel up because it's only 5 feet away from me. And I got my bow in my hand, but I can't shoot it.
Take the arrow out.
Yeah. Wing it.
That was, if a crossbow, I could have done it, but because I could have shot it that close. But at that close, I managed to get up that close to it, and it's like, cool. Now what do I do? So I just kind of back out because I didn't want to spook it.
Did you get out without busting it?
Yeah, I managed to get out, but just it took a long time. But I'm inching up a little bit at a time. I think I probably spent an hour getting this 20 yards to this deer.
But that's the challenge that I like, is, getting yourself in sometimes in situations that now when you're doing it, you're like, man, your mind is just like scrambling. How am I going to do this? How am I going to stay quiet? How am I going to, stay downwind from them, and, stuff like that. And then after you actually accomplish it and you come back, then you're like, oh my gosh, that was an adventure. That was actually kind of fun. I want to do it again. And then come back and tell these guys, hey guys, this is what I did, So we're, that's something that I think that we all enjoy, is, like we said earlier, telling stories, is saying, hey, this worked for me. And then hearing, when Brad talked about rattling the trees, stuff like that, it's like, all right, well, that's another thing I can think about doing. Still, I don't know. I don't know if anything tops the alarms.
Another day.
There's always stories. Like I said,
Yeah.
we could talk for 6 hours.
Yeah. I know that the one thing I hadn't practiced is practice shooting sitting down.
Oh, yeah.
If I could have just sat up, I might have been able to shoot, but I'd never shot from sitting down on the ground.
Mhm.
So, you know,
Right.
that's something that, you know, what position are you going to be in? You know, can we shoot from there? You know, like twisting our way around to shoot. You know, have we shot from that position? And you know, that's
That's
something we need to practice.
what you're talking about there is one of the reasons that I stay with mechanicals, because when you're in a tree stand, especially with a saddle, it's hard to keep that form perfect. You know, like
Right.
the deer that I killed that I packed out, it was back here behind me, and it looked like I was in Circus Soleil the way I was hanging off the tree in that saddle, shooting behind me to make this shot on this deer that was downhill below me. Now, if I've been using a fixed blade broadhead, I'm sure my form was out of whack, and I know that I slightly torqued the bow when I made the shot.
Right.
Shooting on the range is one thing, but and Bill Winke talks about this. It's one of the reasons he still shoots mechanicals, is that, you know, there's shooting 3D and they're shooting on the range, and then there's bow hunting. The deer's never going to be in front of you. Your legs are never going to be perfect. Your shoulders are never going to be perfect. You're never going to have that perfect tee. And there's always going to be, you know, the adrenaline associated with it. So we need something that's a little more forgiving. And I'm
Right.
nowhere near the bow hunter that Bill Winke is. So I shoot mechanicals too, because my form is not going to be perfect at that, you know, that moment when I need to make that shot. And when I'm shooting backwards and hanging off the side of the hill, and I've got just a really short period of time to make that shot happen, I need all the forgiving that I can get with the mechanical. And I mean, and the other side of that is the reliability of a fixed blade and the penetration of a fixed blade. And people want to stick with that. So it's a double-edged sword. You know, you get the forgiveness of the mechanical, but you get the reliability of the fixed.
Well, I guess I like the fixed blade. Kind of like you said, it's the reliability. Plus, both the deer I shot this year, I mean, I blew right through their shoulders, and it just kept on rolling. That's whereas the mechanical, sometimes it'll deflect, or, you know, when those blades pop out. You know, if you get a good clean shot through, yeah, you got a gaping exit wound, and that is great for blood trailing. Where, you know, fixed blade, you know, because mine is what, maybe
You're
an inch and a quarter, something like that. So I'm not going to have a huge blood trail, but I know that when my blade does, or my arrow does go through them, it's got a lot more energy, and it's busting up stuff. And like the doe that I shot, she went maybe not even 30 yards, and the buck I shot, he went maybe 50 yards from where I shot him at, because it just blew right through the shoulders, both lungs, the heart, and the other side. And it just kept on going. And that's kind of the reason why I like fixed blades.
Yeah.
I don't have anything against mechanicals. I mean, these guys, they've been very successful with them. I've seen other people use them, been very successful.
Well, there's a time and a place. Like I'm going to tout myself here. I was the first person in North America to shoot an Asian water buffalo with a VPA broadhead. It's my claim to fame. I used a 2-blade solid steel VPA broadhead. And the reason I use that fixed broadhead is because I was shooting an Asian water buffalo. I mean, it's
Right.
you're talking about a tank on 4 legs. And I needed that heavy arrow, and I needed that indestructible broadhead. And it was basically a sharp chisel, is what it was. Yeah. And it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It went through this shoulder, just behind this shoulder, and there was 10 inches of it sticking out on the other side as the thing turned to run away. So yeah, there's a place. I will say there's definitely a place for it. And with the mechanicals, you're restricted to a broadside or a slightly quartering away shot for it to work. You definitely don't want to get anywhere near any of those big bones, or it'll fail. And I've had it happen. I've had a swacker fail when it hit a large shoulder bone. And these guys still help me try to track the deer. They were great, but it gives you there's pluses and cons to both. And I just feel with the way that I hunt and the places that I hunt that I'll trade off that shot angle for the perfect broadside or quartering away for the forgiveness of the mechanical.
Yeah.
Whereas Travis was willing to get that maximum penetration.
And it's what I've always used since I started bow hunting. So it's what I feel the most confident in at this point. I mean, I do carry mechanical in my quiver, but I don't think I've ever even knocked it up in my bow to shoot it.
I carry a fix too, just in case there's any, little junk, CRP, just stuff that you're trying to pop through.
Yeah,
I never touch a mechanical with trying to do something like that. But
Yeah.
my wife shoots muzzies with her bow, and it's absolutely devastating what she gets, because my wife is a cold-blooded serial killer when it comes to bow hunting. She only shoots 42 pounds, and she's 23.5-inch draw, so she doesn't have a whole lot to work with. She's a small person, so she limits herself inside of 20. Actually, most of the time, 15 yards or closer. And so she'll sit
Not
there.
6.
Yeah, not 6. 6. We don't shoot at 6. We don't shoot at 6. She'll sit there and she'll watch deer, and she will wait and wait and wait and wait. And once they're inside her 15-yard ring and they're turned just right, she is a cold-blooded killer. And she'll put that muzzy exactly where it needs to be. And Travis has been there with me a couple times. You were there too when we tracked one of her deers. Her deer, I've never had one of her deer go further than probably 45, 50 yards. And it's all about shot placement and having a good fixed broadhead with that low poundage.
Now I talk about how much I practice. She goes out and shoots 5 arrows, and I'm good.
Gosh.
And her shot placement was great, but it's like,
yeah,
she hardly practiced it at all.
Yeah, the trick to my wife's accuracy is upsetting her. She's picking on her because I don't feel that she's practicing enough. And then she will go out there and show me that she can hit exactly what she's aiming at, turn around, huff at me, and put the bow down. And she's really, really good at it. She's really, really good at it. She's just one of those people that are just a natural.
Yeah. It definitely takes at first just the basics of learning it, and after that, I think, like you said, it kind of comes just natural to some people. Some people are athletically gifted, and I think those people are the ones that can really even take it up another notch at bow hunting. Whereas like me, I just practice, and I've gotten definitely better over the years as I've done that. And because I think I went through 2 D loops. I think the first year I had my bow, I wore those things out, and I think the very following season I had to have new string put on, because I shot all the time. But now it's gotten me to a point now that, again, it's just all muscle memory. I don't really have to think about it. But it's been a journey that I definitely can say that I'm very glad that I've got involved with these 2 guys and going hunting, and it's been fun. And I can't wait to the point where my kids are old enough that they can come with their dad and their 2 uncles and take them hunting. And that's what I'm kind of looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm over 55 and my knees hurt. I can't wait for them to come with us too and drag their stuff out. Expect your elders, drag the deer for me.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, over 55. Yeah, I wish I was that young again.
Oh, but it's high mileage, man. It's high mileage.
Yeah, it's I've only shot a muzzy broadhead. I haven't shot anything else but muzzies. I started with a 4-blade. Now I'm down to a 100 grain 3-blade, but that's all I shoot. I do have another set of mechanicals when I was going to try and use what I use for target shooting, but when I needed new string on my hunting bow and didn't have it, but I didn't end up using it anyway. But yeah, we had a podcast here, I think a couple times ago. The whole podcast is about broadheads. It was from a mechanical broadhead manufacturer. Look at it. Thorn was the name of it. And, we talked about, mechanicals and fixed blades, and they actually have a fixed blade that looks very nasty. Yeah. Yeah. You know, the old spiked maces, you know, had all the spikes sticking out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what their broadhead looks like. Their fixed blade. There's like
Wow.
4 blades and they're spiraling around, you know, getting bigger as they go down. And like,
Yeah, I've
oh
seen
man,
it.
yeah, that would be a devastating hole that one would make.
Yeah. Yeah. I know the holes from my wife's muzzies on her deer, they're a little bit smaller than a golf ball. And I'm always amazed that with the poundage that she's shooting and that setup, that it ends up with a wound that big. It's just like a water hose coming out of the deer.
Right.
And it's just the blades are placed perfectly so the tissue pulls away from the wound instead of closing up.
Now she's shooting a 4 blade or 3 blade.
Shooting 4 blade, shooting 4 blade. I think tricore, I think, no?
Yeah, that's the tip.
Yeah.
It is a
Yeah.
very tough tip.
Oh, yeah, and it's hard and steel.
I've actually stuck one in a concrete block.
Oh my gosh.
I still use the broadhead. It didn't hurt the broadhead at all. It cracked the
Wow.
insert in half and it cracked the shaft back about an inch and that was it. I took it off, cut the shaft down, put a new tip in it for my kid because it didn't hurt anything after about an inch and a half. So I cut off a couple inches and long enough for my kid when he was only like 8 years old. And he's not shooting any high poundage, but the broadhead was stuck in the concrete block. I went up and pulled the broadhead out. Didn't even flatten the tip.
Man, it's a blast right through a rib, no problem.
Oh yeah, ribs, bones.
Mhm.
I actually, before I knew I was supposed to shoot a lot shorter, I was shooting a little bit longer than what I should be shooting. I didn't know at the time, and I caught my sleeve with the string, and it threw the arrow off. Well, I hit it in the back hip, shattered the thigh bone, and it didn't go very far because, you know, I shattered the bone, and you know, I got the deer, but you know that it just shattered the bone. It's like it was nothing there.
It's like a
And
big triple.
when I cleaned it, it's like it wasn't, and not just break it, cut it through it was like a big pieces, 2 big pieces and a small chunk out of it, and then small little fragments in there. And you can see right where the tip of that point hit that bone. And you can still see that 3-sided point from that tricord tip. So yeah, they're a tough broadhead.
Yeah, well, they do a great job on the deer she shoots for them. But
Yeah.
like I said, she doesn't shoot them past about 15 yards. And she's lethal inside that ring. But I mean, how far out do you practice? Because before I sold I just moved and had to spend a year in a subdivision, and it was very difficult because I couldn't practice with my bow very much.
Right.
I used to have a setup on the place that we sold. I would go anywhere from 10 all the way out to 50, and I had block targets and 3D and all that set up. How far do you shoot out practicing for where you guys are at in Nebraska?
Well, it depends on how. We have an outdoor range that you can go up to 60 yards, no problem. My problem is I can't see the target that well, that far away. So I don't take the long shots because I can't see. You know, as you start getting older, you got a little bit of a cataract forming on your eyes, and you know, the right one's just blurry enough that, you know, those long ranges, I can't see the target well enough. So I just don't take them longer ones anymore. But I just, you know, in my yard, I can go back easily 20 yards. I don't like to go too much further than that because there are houses around. So I'm shooting based outside of my garage, and there is houses over there. So I don't like to go back too far, but I could go back probably 60 or 80 yards. But now then we're getting that long distance, and now it's you know, not quite the safest place. So I generally go about 20 yards is all I practice in my yard, but I can go up to one of the outdoor ranges. There's several of them around here that I can go to and practice the longer ranges outside.
That's what I had to do this year, was because I was living in a subdivision. I had to stay around 20-25 yards to practice. And I felt really restricted because I used to regularly shoot at 40 and 50 yards. And shooting at those is when you go to the woods and you shoot at something at 18 to 20 yards, it feels like a slam dunk.
Right.
Because you're focused so much on your form and your release and your grip and everything when you're shooting at those distances that when you shoot that 20-yard shot, you got the same habits, same muscle memory, the same release, and it's just a slam dunk. And I was really, really worried about that this fall because I haven't had the opportunity to shoot those distances. I was shooting at 20 and 25.
Right. Well, last times when I'd practice at 20 yards and go to 30 and then go to 40 and then go back up to 20 and I'd start destroying arrows, you know, because you're grouping really tight. You go back further, you're still grouping just as tight. You go back further, and you're still grouping just as tight. And then you go up and yeah, I quit shooting one spots because I've wrecked too many arrows.
Yeah, that was me. I would go out in my backyard and shoot off my deck. I'd put one arrow in each target and then go pull them, put one arrow in each target. And then when we were hunting in the mountains, I incorporated archery into my fitness plan. And I would do, put a pack on with 20 pounds in it. And I'd shoot my arrows, go get my arrows, come back up the hill with the pack on, and I'd stop, do the push-ups, put my feet under the steps, do my setups, then go up and shoot my arrows again with my heart rate up and my breathing elevated. And that was a great training regime for getting ready for bow hunting.
Oh yeah.
The deer comes out, first of all, it gets you in shape, it helps get in the woods and get out of the woods. But when your heart rate gets escalated and your breathing is escalated because you're excited, it helps you control that and execute the shot, because you feel your lungs burning while you're trying to hold that breath and get that breathing slowed down. That was a really good training regime for when we were hunting in the mountains.
Yeah, because you're walking, you may come up on one and here it is, and you stop and have to load your arrow and draw back and shoot. So you got to be ready for that.
Yeah, it's like you said, even just staying in shape and is another aspect of, because at least when we would hunt, like you said, in the mountains, or when we go out to Missouri, except for a few times I'll just hunt the parking lot, but there's times I even, I'll go further back and go in and all this. And if you're doing, a morning hunt, you're hiking in, sitting for a while, hiking back out, we'll go get something to eat or whatever, and you're hiking back in again and hiking back out again. And then when we're in Missouri, we're there for between 7 to 10 days, and you're doing this, it's going to wear on your body.
Right.
You don't stay in shape, also on top of that. It just doesn't make it as fun either. Yeah. Because you're just like, man, I got to walk all the way back out there again. You just feel it, especially by about day 6. You're just like, oh,
right.
So
if you make yourself miserable during the summer leading up to fall, like what I did this year planning for my hunt way back in the mountains where there weren't any people and the deer walked up to me at work. Before I get off work, I'd throw on my weighted vest and hit the incline treadmill. And I knew that I was going to have a certain amount of elevation change, and I knew I was about 1.25 miles in from where I was going to get out of the car. So I started off with like a 20-pound weighted vest and started working my way up. And I got to where I was at 42-pound vest, and I was going 1.25 miles at the elevation change that I needed to get to the spot. So when I killed my deer this fall and I had to pack it out, it wasn't miserable. I mean, it was work.
Right.
I conditioned for it all summer long, going into the fall. I didn't realize that the pack was 92 pounds. I didn't know what it really weighed. I've been training with 42. So I grabbed it up, and when I picked it up, I was like, oh, it's a little heavier than the vest feels. I was thinking there's probably maybe 60 pounds. Slap it on, start hiking out of there, cross a creek, go a little further, get to another creek, set the pack down, wash my hands off, look at the pack. It's a lot of meat. Put the pack on, hike out, go to the processor, and I say, hey, could you weigh this? He puts it on the hook, and it's 92 pounds. And I'm like, holy cow. My 55-year-old butt just humped out 92 pounds worth of stuff in a pack out of the mountains, and I didn't die.
Yeah.
So
That says a lot for staying in shape.
yeah, that conditioning through the summer paid for itself, because if I hadn't have done that, I don't even know if I could, don't even know if I could have carried it out. I may have made multiple trips to get it out, but, considering that's the area that I've moved to, that's something I'm gonna have to make my daily regime is, walking the driveway to and from the house, or just hitting that treadmill every other day with a weighted vest to stay in shape enough, so I can still go back in there and hunt like that. I mean, I know any of the guys that are watching this podcast or listening to this podcast from out west in the Rockies are laughing at me right now, because they're like, we walked in 14 miles. What is he talking about? Well, here on the East Coast, we don't do that much.
Yeah, your mile and a half was a task for you.
Yeah, that's a task for us. Yeah, we got humidity. We'll give you some of that humidity if you want it.
Yeah. Yeah, come there and walk that mile and a half. It's like walking 15 miles with no humidity.
Yeah, so it's a year round thing that people will have to also take into account. If you step into this arena of bow hunting, deer, or whatever it is that you might want to hunt, or even just rifle hunting or any type of hunting, it's a year round thing. It's not just it's just not during the fall. Now, is that an important time? Very much so, as Ken alluded to during his toast at my wedding, because he was my best man. Making sure that my wife knew from September to January that that's hunting season there. So
leave him alone, let him go.
So
that's it. That's hunting season. He's gonna be gone.
Yeah, and so my wife, she's very understanding. She's been very supportive, and as I said to you earlier, she's gotten a bow now, and she's wanting to get out there and learn, and so I'm excited just to get her started and really get her technique down and teaching her, and then same thing with my kids, as they get older and teaching them, and so it comes back full circle again, when I first started to now I'm teaching somebody, as Ken said earlier, he passed it on down to Brad and I. Now, we're going to pass it down to my wife, and he has a child, and I got two, and we're going to pass it down to them. And, so I am very, very happy that I got into bow hunting. I never thought I would, but I'm glad that I did. It's changed me in a way that it's made me appreciate the woods even more, and appreciate, harvesting a deer, and being able to take that home and, feed my family with it. I thoroughly enjoy that aspect of it. And then sometimes, which we hadn't done in a while, just because now we kind of live so far apart, but there's times that the three of us would just get together and shoot our bows. We go out maybe scout for a little while, and we get back to the house and shoot our bows for maybe an hour, and and practice, and sometimes we make a game out of it, so that's what's made it fun for me. And I can't see not ever doing this. It's become a part of my life. I enjoy it. So anybody that I can talk to that has an interest in it, or any type of seeking or asking, I've had quite a few people ask me about it, and a lot of them are like, where do I start? So I try to kind of what Ken had told me, just go put some bows in your hand, see what feels comfortable. If you go to certain places, they'll probably even let you shoot it, and that way you kind of have an idea, how does it feel, what's the reaction of it, what's your reaction to it. I know first time that you set up my bow and I shot, I was like, man, this is freaking cool. So I like this.
And that's what's so nice about setting up a new one for somebody is that's like, oh, this is cool, I like this. And
at that point, I knew he was doomed.
Right. That's when they're hooked, and they're going to be shooting for quite a while. And there's no real age limit. Whether you're 5 or 95, you can still shoot. And,
Mhm.
you know, as long as you got a bow you can pull back, you can shoot. And I seen a guy was 95, was still competing.
Oh, gosh, that's
He
cool.
was, I seen some arrows that he shot in the tournament, and, you know, been doing it a long time. So, but speaking of a long time, we've actually been talking for a couple hours here. So we said we could talk about this all day, but we do need to kind of cut it short, you know, but well, I guess it's not short, but I mean,
We'll
So-
set up another one. We'll do part 2, 3, 4, 5, however long you want to talk about.
yeah, we could do it more. So let's go through, and any parting thoughts for anybody listening or watching this?
Well, for me, I'll say that archery in general, like Travis says, has changed who I am. It's changed the way I look at things and how I deal with stuff. It's made it, as far as bow hunting goes, it's made it impossible for me to drive down the road and not look at a cornfield.
Mhm.
I have to look at a corn or a soybean field. It's just intuitive. I can't stop myself. And it's therapeutic. There's something about getting out there in the morning before everybody's up stirring and just slinging a few arrows, you know, with no distractions or anything. It's like a moment of zen. And any archer out there is going to know what I'm talking about. There is that time on the shot, that rare shot that we all are trying to achieve, that as soon as it leaves the string, you know that the arrow is hitting exactly where you want it to go.
Mhm.
And it does it. And that feeling is what keeps you going and shooting and trying to do it again and trying to do it again. And it's like that hole in one in golf, you know, you're striving for it. It's rare, but it happens, and you sit there and you strive for it over and over. And I mean, I think archery's changed who I am. I am a bow hunter that does all the other things that are in my life. I'm a bow hunter first.
For me, it's the piece getting out of the woods, unplugging for a little bit, and that finish line that keeps moving just a little bit further out of grasp. So the never ending challenge is what my appeal is.
Mhm. That's the same thing. Again, you know, from the start of the journey to now, just being out there, and something that I've done over the last year to even help me improve my accuracy with shooting is, you know, because kind of like how Ken's, like he said that he had at his old house. My house is kind of, I'm lucky enough where I got targets all over my yard. But I've made it to now where I've even like painted little orange circles or squares. Like I'll tape out a little area and just spray paint it orange. And I know exactly that's where I want to hit. And it just brings, because when you're shooting at a target or see a bag, you know, when you're first starting, you're like, I just want to hit the bag. And now
Right.
you've taken it and you just like zoned it down and made it even smaller. So kind of like this year, I think that's why I felt like I just put the shot placement exactly where I wanted to. And it was just, you know, to me, it was just practice and practice and practice. And that was something that I've seen a few other people do where they'll just make a small mark. And I know Ken used to put labels, round labels on a target, and he would hit the I mean, about the size of $50, weren't they?
Yeah, they're
Something
about
like-
1/4. Yeah.
And he was hitting those. Well, I didn't have labels, so I just used spray paint, and I just would make a small spot, you know, whether it was on my 3D target or just, you know, your bag targets or whatever, and just keep practicing hitting those. And I found that has improved my shot, you know, placement tremendously. And I would suggest to anybody that, you know, wants to take it to, you know, a different way of training or add something to that repertoire of, you know, of how they train, you know, do something like that. Because it definitely helped me. And as for the rest, I love it. I can't say that enough. I love bow hunting. I love being out there. And I had to love it if I went the first 5 years, I never shot anything. So you have to stay dedicated, and it's paid off. And I can't see living without it. So
Before we get going, OWM Hunting at Facebook, OWM
hunting,
Hunting at YouTube and
Instagram.
Instagram. Yeah, we're out there. Not a huge presence, but we're out there.
And we're posting stuff, like we said, we post stuff year round. This past year, we had new shirts printed, new stickers, because it was our 10-year anniversary that we've all been hunting together. So we sold out of all of our t-shirts. The first batch of t-shirts that I'd gotten in, those are all gone already. And so we wanted to throw out there, if there's a big enough interest of people wanting t-shirts, I'll do another order again. Still got plenty of stickers, because I think I went overboard with stickers. Got such a good freaking fun with it. I just went ahead and got a bunch of those. So actually, if you email us your address, we'll ship you a sticker.
Okay, I can do that. Yeah, I'll put a link in the description for the podcast of
Okay.
how to contact you. And then also put it in the description when I upload to YouTube.
Okay.
And then anybody in the Archery Talk 101 group, they can just message you. Because your link will be right in there with that, how they
Okay.
contact you. And yeah, feel free to upload the videos to the group too. I'm sure they'd be interested in those too if you want. So I'd like to thank.
Did you discover us off of Facebook? Is that how you found us?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Good
Okay.
deal.
So anyway, I'd like to thank you guys for being on the show. We went a little bit longer than I normally do, but it's been so interesting. I could even go longer, but we do need to kind of cut it a little bit shorter here. Once again, my name is Roy Canterbury, and I've been your host today on Archery Talk 101.